Church and State in Armenia, A Crisis Decades in the Making. Article by Tigran Yegavian, published on March 4, 2026, on EVN Report. A post-Soviet settlement built on ambiguity. The Armenian Constitution, Article 18, recognizes the exclusive mission of the Armenian Apostolic Church in the spiritual life of the Armenian people, while Articles 17 and 41 guarantee freedom of religion. This dual formulation creates a unique constitutional arrangement that combines symbolic recognition with formal separation, a structure that has, at times, generated political ambiguity. After independence in 1991, the Church regained public prominence as a symbol of national continuity. The election and consecration of Catholicos Garikin II in 1999 marked the beginning of a long period of institutional consolidation centered on Echmiadzin. Under his leadership, the Church strengthened its administrative centralization and reasserted its authority over diocesan structures in Armenia and the diaspora. Yet over time, this consolidation generated tensions. Critics, both clerical and lay, have pointed to an increasingly centralized style of governance, limited internal accountability mechanisms, and strained relations with certain dioceses. The resignation in 2013 of Archbishop Norvan Zakarian, former primate of the Diocese of the Armenian Church of France, following public tensions with the Mother See, was perceived by many in the diaspora as symptomatic of deeper governance problems. In addition, media reports linking church-related financial structures to offshore arrangements during the Panama Papers revelations further complicated the public image of the institution. Even when no legal wrongdoing is established, reputational damage in a fragile democracy can be significant. A church that historically embodied moral authority found itself exposed to the same scrutiny applied to political elites. More broadly, segments of Armenian society have expressed concern that the Church's institutional priorities appeared increasingly administrative and political rather than pastoral and spiritual. Whether entirely fair or not, the perception that spiritual renewal and internal reform were secondary to institutional control has contributed to alienation among parts of the faithful. These accumulated grievances did not emerge overnight. They reflect governance choices spanning more than 2 decades. The government's responsibility, however, responsibility for the current impasse does not lie on one side alone. The post-2018 Armenian government, while claiming democratic legitimacy and reformist intent, has at times adopted a confrontational posture toward the Church. Public rhetoric, politicized investigations, and episodic pressure have contributed to hardening positions within ecclesiastical circles. When the state instrumentalizes anti-clerical sentiment for political consolidation, it weakens both institutions. Conversely, when the Church intervenes directly in partisan politics, it risks compromising its transnational moral authority and alienating segments of the citizenry. Reciprocal interference is structurally corrosive. Armenia's history explains why the Church became the repository of national continuity in the absence of statehood. Yet the restoration of sovereignty in 1991 created a fundamentally new constitutional framework, one that presupposes institutional differentiation. A democratic state must neither subordinate the Church nor treat it as a political rival. Likewise, a national church cannot function as an alternative center of political legitimacy. A further layer of complexity in the current crisis is the role of external geopolitical actors, notably Russian religious and political networks. Observers of Armenia's evolving domestic and foreign policy landscape have noted that the confrontation between the government and senior figures within the Armenian Apostolic Church cannot be understood purely as an internal institutional dispute. Rather, it has unfolded against the backdrop of Armenia's broader geopolitical recalibration and growing wariness in Yerevan about continued Russian influence through cultural, religious, and soft power channels. In recent months, analysts have pointed out that certain clerical elites within the Church maintain historical and symbolic ties with the Russian Orthodox Church and the Russian state, reflecting long-standing patterns of alignment dating back to the post-Soviet period and Russia's continued reliance on informal influence mechanisms in the region. Statements of deep concern from the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church regarding Armenia's government actions, as well as public support for figures associated with Echmiadzin, underline how religious institutions can be entangled in geopolitical competition. particularly as Armenia pivots its foreign policy toward the West and attempts to diversify strategic partnerships. Such dynamics have led Armenian political leaders to frame aspects of the conflict in broader national security terms, arguing that external actors may seek to exploit religious networks to influence domestic affairs, concerns that have been echoed in public debates and media commentary. This is where the role of the President of the Republic deserves renewed reflection. If the President is the guardian of the Constitution and the symbol of national unity beyond partisan conflict, could this office serve as a mediator in moments of church-state tension? Precisely because the presidency is constitutionally situated above day-to-day political struggles, it might provide an institutional space for dialogue grounded not in political rivalry, but in constitutional principles. Armenia lacks a structured mechanism for resolving such crises. Mediation should not depend on personalities, but on institutional design. Lessons from comparative models. Comparative experience may offer useful insights. The Alsace-Moselle Concordat regime in France provides an instructive example. Unlike the rest of France, where strict secularism, laïcité, prevails under the 1905 law separating church and state, Alsace-Moselle operates under a concordat inherited from the Napoleonic settlement of 1801 and preserved after World War I. Under this system, recognized religious communities maintain a formalized and legally codified relationship with the state. Responsibilities are clearly defined. Financial arrangements are transparent. Mutual recognition replaces ambiguity. The lesson is not to transplant the concordat model mechanically to Armenia. Historical trajectories differ. The Armenian Apostolic Church is not merely a domestic religious body. It is a transnational institution structured across multiple jurisdictions, Echmeyadzin, Kilikia, the Patriarchates of Jerusalem and Constantinople, with a vast diasporic constituency. Any reform must account for this polycentric character. However, the broader principle remains relevant. Clarity prevents crisis. Institutional ambiguity invites confrontation. Beyond polarization toward institutional coherence, what is at stake today is neither secularization nor clerical dominance. It is institutional coherence. A mature state does not fear religious authority. A confident church does not seek political control. Both are strengthened when their respective spheres are clearly defined and mutually respected. The current crisis is not simply the product of personalities, neither of a Catholicos accused of centralization and insufficient transparency, nor of a government accused of political instrumentalization. It is the outcome of decades of unresolved constitutional ambiguity, compounded by governance failures on both sides. If Armenia is to move forward, the debate must rise above denunciation and defensiveness. It must engage historical memory, constitutional law, ecclesiology, and democratic theory. Only then can the Church recover moral authority through spiritual renewal and internal accountability, and the state reaffirm constitutional order without antagonism. Institutional peace, like political peace, requires design, not improvisation.